do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome to the Counter-Racist Coach Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. And this is, again, the Counter-Racist Coach Show, also known as the CRCS. Now, to get in contact with the show, you can dial 516-453-9921. Be sure to press the number 1 button, as Mark from Canada has done, Douglas has done that, and a few others. You can also get in contact with me by the Gmail, 7MrBobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. That 7 is a numerical number, 7MrBobby at gmail.com. And Mr. Fuller and I have, at some point in the show, usually about 15, 20 minutes in to the hour, we will read a couple of Gmails and answer that, and then we will go right back to the questions. So without further ado, let's go to Mark from Canada. Mark, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. Let me get it up in there. Okay, there you go. Mark, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hi, good morning. And my question to Mr. Fuller today is, with the death of George Floyd, we can see that there's been a global outcry in regards to racism. And even in my own country, in Canada here, they're talking about police reform and defunding police departments. So I'd like to ask Mr. Fuller, do you see this global outcry and protest as having any meaningful outcome?
Mr. Fuller?
I was cut off on the last part of his question.
Okay, Mark, could you ask Mr. Fuller again that question? He was cut off.
Sorry about that. Yes, Mr. Fuller, with the global protest that we see, and in my country in particular, Canada, we're talking about defunding police departments and so forth, and just a total reconstruction. But do you see this as having any meaningful effect on the lives of black people with the death of George Floyd? Thank you.
Do I see the defunding of the law enforcement people as having a constructive effect? Is that the question?
Yes, sir. Defunding and the global protest in general. So both of them combined. Thanks.
Right now, I don't know. That's for white people to decide. And looking at everything that's going on, so lots of white people involved, something like I've never seen before, all over the world, and focused on the race issue. So white people can make the decisions about the entire future of the black people of this planet, according to compensatory counter-racist logic. The black people of the planet are in prison. We don't make decisions about anything that count unless they are approved of by the white supremacists of the world, because we are in their prison. We are born in their prison. So if any improvements are going to be made, and I like to think of if the problem is solved rather than just more, you might say, to make a prison analogy, another paint job or better mattresses or better food within the prison system. No, we need to get rid of the entire prison system called racism, the system of white supremacy, if anything will work. But if defunding the law enforcement people I don't know exactly what that means. That would have to be explained in detail and how that would work. And last but not least, what would be the result? So you defund the police departments, and I do not know what defunding really means in a practical sense. But I think people are saying take away the money from law enforcement. Okay, you take away the money, so when you take away something, that means you're going to replace it with something better. Now, what would that something better be? No law enforcement funding. And I don't know does that mean that you're not going to have any laws? You're not going to have any law enforcement? That everybody makes their own laws as they go along, day to day, wherever they happen to be, whomever you happen to be, you just make up a law and enforce it. And is that what we're talking about here? All you have to do is just keep asking questions. So I don't know in answer to the question, because we'd have to ask, like the code says, the people who are coming up with the idea of defunding, whatever that means, law enforcement. And then any other thing, the second question, what is the second act? White people all over the world are marching now every day. I mean, something like I have never seen before in the name of ending racism. I see signs saying white silence is white violence. So whomever makes the signs should say exactly what that means. And since I guess getting rid of the silence means they're going to be vocal now, they're going to be saying something because they've been silent. I guess that's it. I'm just guessing because I didn't make the signs. So whomever makes the signs should be able to explain it. That's the compensatory way. If I go out here and make a sign today saying Black Lives Matter or white violence or white silence is white violence, I should be able to explain in detail exactly what that means and what it should mean and what problem it's going to solve. That's the compensatory way.
Yes, sir.
But I didn't make the signs.
Okay. Thank you,
I didn't start the marches.
Okay. Thank you, Mark, for your question. And again, don't be a stranger. Okay, let's go to Douglas. Okay, Douglas, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, Bobby. My
Good
question
morning.
for Mr. Fuller, I think it's bigger than this Greg Lloyd situation. So my question for Mr. Fuller is, Mr. Fuller, do you think it's possible that the white supremacy organization is fighting amongst themselves for power and black people, we are their collateral damage? Would this be white supremacy at its weakest stage? And what should black people do when this occurs?
Okay, it could be. It could be what you just said, that it's another part of the white supremacist conspiracy. It could be that. It could be that. Now, that's not to say that all of the white people who are out there in the street marching, some white people or many white people might just consider it something like a holiday, an excuse to get out of the house. And a lot of black people may look at it that way. I think I saw some black people out in the middle of the street doing the electric slide and whatnot. So it's, it could be Mardi Gras time for some black people. They don't take this seriously at all, about solving problems. It's just an excuse to have a dance because some black people are just thinking about having a festival. Many black people all over the planet, particularly in the Northwestern Hemisphere, anything that looks like it's an excuse to get out in the streets and party, they're going to be a part of it. They're going to try to lead it. But if you ask, what is the significance of what they're doing outside of partying, they'll tell you, none. I'm having a good time. This is fun. You know, we like fun. That's all we like. We don't even think about nothing else. We don't think about Florida or nobody else. Hey, we see all these people out here. There's a crowd of people. A lot of black people just love crowds. You get into the crowd and then start doing what? What black people, truth be told, love to do most, show off. An excuse to show off. I got some talent. Nobody knows that I know how to sing, so I'm going to get up here and I'm going to find a reason to take that stage, and I'm going to sing a song. I mean, because I've been writing songs and ain't nobody been paying no attention to me. A lot of black people have that attitude toward any crowd. I don't care what the crowd is about. They don't have to care. They just want an excuse to show off. And so I don't know if that answers the question directly or not. Now, the white people, yes. It could be that many of them are saying, hey, if we put on the biggest march that ever was and sustain it so that there will never be any marches bigger than this, we would have shown our sincerity, and then we can go into phase 2 of putting these black people asleep under the refinement banner of white supremacy forever. We can have them just as groggy as they can possibly get, saying the race issue is over. Hallelujah. Jubilee time. At last. Free at last. It could be that that's what you might call the real smart white supremacists, the refined white supremacists have in mind. But we'll see. Most of us will be here to see how it all plays out.
Okay.
All
righty.
Thanks, Mr. Fuller. Thank
you, Mark, for your question, and don't be a stranger. Okay, listen, when you call in, sorry about that static, I don't know what's causing that, but when you call in, please give the screener your name so that I'll know who it is, because even if you hit the press 1 button and I don't know your name, you know, I have the option of going to somebody else who has their name on there. So I'm just asking you, please, ma'am, please, sir, give the screener your name so that I can introduce you properly. Okay, what we're going to do here is I'm going to go to the Gmail. Now, listen, when you write me, 7 Mr. Bobby, the numero 7 Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, I may not get an opportunity to read your Gmail because I'm still backed up and we are efforting. That is, myself and Mr. Fuller are efforting to get your Gmails read. So be patient if I don't get to read it. It's because there's a ton before you. I'm going to go to the Gmail right now. And this is from Mr. Gibson. He says this, Mr. Fuller. He says, I have wrote in before on the subject of those who need the most help. In answer to my previous question, you stated that whomever needs the most help is on a case-by-case determination. The example you gave about cars getting out of the way of someone being carried in an ambulance is interesting because it seems to point to help as it relates to physical/internal incapabilities. In relation to the example, should the record or recorders of the George Floyd murder video risk their lives or risk being arrested in order to help save his life, or do we declare Floyd as a casualty of war in that it's inevitable that some blacks will die in this white supremacist war? Can I ask you, would you have done in that moment walking past a similar situation? I understand you put out a fire that we've killed many in your past.
So is the question, what would I have done? Is that the question?
Yeah. Well, that was the last. But the question here was, let's see, it's inevitable that some will die in this white supremacist war. He said, in relation to that example, should the recorders of the George Floyd murder video risk being arrested in order to help save his life, or do we declare Floyd as a casualty of war in that it's inevitable that some black folks will die in this white supremacist war?
Well, that's a lot of questions wrapped up into one, and some of it kind of be convoluted. But yes, I guess. I'm just guessing now about, is this a part of the war? Yes. Well, according to logic, anytime there's any kind of conflict, there's war. That's war. War is nothing but conflict, where somebody is harmed. So the question is, how would I react on that particular battlefield of the war? Because the war is going on all the time. The war between those who believe in racism and those who don't. That's perpetual war. That's always been since the beginning of white supremacy. White supremacy is war. Racism is war by definition. This practicing racism is war. WAR. So that's a part of it. A law enforcement officer, and the code calls it race soldiers, if the person is doing it and he's doing it as a racist. If the person is a racist, then that's not a police officer. In fact, the code says we shouldn't even use that term, police brutality. That's impossible. I've been repeating that over and over again, just like I repeat the system of white supremacy over and over again. We should get out of the habit, and this is just a suggestion based on logic. It's impossible for a police officer to be brutal. It's impossible. So that's not what you're looking at. You see a race soldier, a suspected race soldier, in a police officer's uniform. It's not the uniform. It's who is in the uniform. And a police officer is a person that practices justice. And so there are no police officers. So you can't accuse a police officer of doing anything, because there's no such thing as justice in the system of white supremacy. But to get back to the answer to the question, how would I react? I would probably react the way that everybody else in the crowd was reacting. Because, first of all, you don't really know what's going on. Mm-hmm. You see somebody kneeling on somebody's neck, but you don't know how that feels. I don't know what it feels like to have somebody's foot on my neck physically like that. It's never been done. So I can see it going on, but I don't know that a person is actually dying. And if I knew that the person was actually dying, I could look at it and tell that that person is dying. Then the code says, in answer to the question, that depends on each individual person. That's why it's called the United Independent. You don't look over your shoulder and say, why don't y'all do something? If you want to be the person to go and knock that officer off of that person's neck, then that's your choice and the consequences that go with it. Now, what would I do walking up on a scene like that? Most likely, knowing me, I would see that there's something going on. I say there's a black person in trouble, but I wouldn't know exactly the details of how much pressure is on his neck and all like that. In fact, I would probably expect at some point him to pull him up by those handcuffs, like I've seen that. I've seen arrests being made and put in the back of the car and drive off. That's what I would be expecting to happen. But when I saw because I don't think anybody in the crowd knew this person was dying or was going to be dead, and including the person the 14-year-old who just was running the camera. So what the other people were doing, I guess I would just react the way that other people reacted. But in answer to the question, if the caller understood exactly what's happening, then under the United Independent System, if the caller wants to take direct action, then that's what the United Independent System is all about. You never check everybody else out and say, who's going to do this? Somebody else needs to know. What are you going to do?
Okay.
So that comes down to the individual.
Okay. You answered that question. Okay. Here's another question from Bob. He says this. Out of your entire code, Mr. Fuller, there are only a few things I take exception to. The main being your theory that it is impossible for police to be brutal, and your command to us to stop saying that. I completely disagree. The millions of people who are out protesting worldwide as we speak are not saying we need to eliminate angel brutality, but brutality that is enforced and encouraged by scores of police academies and police unions from coast to coast. I ask you, Mr. Fuller, what other profession do you know that can get away with cursing at as well as physically hitting, body slamming, tasing, shooting to kill nonviolent citizens sometimes without much provocation? Race soldiers will carry out the brutal act while other non-white and even other white officers who believe in justice stand idly by and do absolutely nothing. That's because police have taken an oath to enforce laws written by white supremacist psychopaths. So how in the hell can they be not brutal and unjust? It's not logical to suggest that the enforcement arm of white supremacy can believe in justice. You may have believed in and practiced justice when you were an officer, but that's not indicative of the whole, and you know it. So do you really believe that police only practice justice, or are you simply saying that in hopes that the police will change via the positive affirmations you're putting out there over the airwaves about them only practicing justice, and how can they never be brutal, Brother Jay?
I hope that what I am saying is understood. I'm talking about the use of words. Words matter. Like Black Lives Matter, words matter. Police officers, or the word police, a police officer by definition practices justice. A white supremacist doesn't. I'm going to say that again. I might have to say it repeat it 1,000 times until it sinks in, maybe. Police officers don't even exist. Like America doesn't exist. I'm talking about a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at things and describing them according to the words that are being used. What is the definition of a police officer? A person that practices justice, literally, and sees to it that justice is always practiced. Justice does not exist. Therefore, police officers don't exist. That word shouldn't even be used. So it's impossible for a police officer to be brutal because police officers don't exist. You have law enforcement officers. They enforce laws. Who are the law enforcement officers? The people who enforce laws. What are the laws? Whatever the law is. Laws mean something that is done. That's a law. That's the definition of law, something that's done. The definition of law is anything that is done. Anything that is done is a law. See, I'm talking about the use of words. We have to change our entire language. But that ran right past a lot of people. A lot of people say that. Fuller, you're talking about police are not brutal? Are you crazy? I say police can't be brutal because they don't exist. They don't exist. Law enforcement officers exist. Now, you got two kinds of law enforcement officers, dominantly. Those who try to practice justice and those who don't. And among those who don't, I coined the term within the racial context, and that is race soldiers. That's a term I made up. Why? Because that's the term that I think should be used to apply to a white person who is a law enforcement officer, but he's enforcing race law. And he's called a race soldier in a race war. So you expect him to do or her to do exactly what a white supremacist would do. Lynch that black person. But since you can't go in court and use that term because it's not going to be accepted, you use the term suspected race soldier, which you can use even in a court of law. I suspected that person was a race soldier. That's what I would say if I was in court today. And the judge would then have to ask me, what do you mean race soldier? Or somebody, the lawyer would have to ask. Because the judge probably wouldn't. But the lawyer, some lawyer, the defense lawyer, the prosecutor, or somebody, would ask me what I meant. Mm-hmm. See, when you make up a term, you are the person who is supposed to explain it. Mm-hmm. So what you do, we have to make up terms that fit the situation and stick with them. In order to change things and to do what? Get rid of confusion. Right. Because there's too much confusion when you say the police, the police. Now you got confusion. Okay. Get rid of the police. All right. They say, no, you can't get rid of the police. You got confusion. See what I mean? Now you got people fighting over a word.
Okay. Last one before we go to break. This comes from Harry. He says, "This my question this morning, Mr. Fuller, is if you think the racism, white supremacy is on its way out based on all the protests against injustice led by people of all races. Also, what are your thoughts about these Caucasian Americans who are begging African Americans for forgiveness by taking a knee, laying face down on the ground in our presence, as well as these mega corporations donating hundreds of millions of dollars to social justice causes? Is white supremacy conceding defeat, or is it something else? Thank you, and have a good day."
In answer to all of the above, replace white supremacy with justice. That's what the code says. We need a code where we're exact about everything that we say and do. We use exact language that goes around with counter-racism, counter-racist science. We don't have a counter-racist science. We got a lot of slogans. We got a lot of hand clapping. We got a lot of hugging. We got a lot of anger. We got a lot of people breaking windows. What we don't have is a code of thought, speech, and action where every move that you make is precision work, guaranteed to work. That's what a code is. Everything that you say is going to be better said than anybody else. Everything that you do is going to be better done than anybody else. That's code.
Okay.
All
Got to
right.
leave it there, Mr. Fuller. We're getting ready for the break here. Have to leave it there. Okay. Thank you for listening, calling in. Thank you for your Gmails. Vorp, thank you for all that have done. You are listening to, thank you, Pata, you're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, also called the CRCS. Now, this is what I'd like for you to do. When you call in, that number, 516-453-9921, please, ma'am, please, sir, hit the number 1 button. You will go to the top of the line. Please enter or have my screener get your name so that I can properly give you the introduction, or else I may have to go to somebody else because I don't know your name. I don't know who I'm speaking with. So please, ma'am, please, sir, just make it a point to do that. I also will try to answer some of your questions that you're sending me on the chat. Mind you, the questions that I'm on the chat are my answers. They're not Mr. Fuller's answers, and you really want Mr. Fuller's answers. You don't want my opinion. You want Mr. Fuller's opinion. So anyway, call this number again. The number is 516-453-9921, and make sure you press the number 1 button, and then we can go on from there. Okay, let me see here. Looks like I have Ishmael, so let me see if I can get you on here, Ishmael. Okay, Ishmael, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question, please.
Okay. How you doing? Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I have a question. The question is, you have spoken and said we are prisoners of war, meaning it was an act of war to get us in this position in the first place. And you speak on that we use our words to break out of the prison. But my question is, how do we use a social solution to a physical problem? Meaning they are physically harming us, they are physically attacking us. How do we talk our way out of them killing us and beating us up and keeping us here? If somebody's punched you in the face, can you talk them out of stop punching you in the face? So I would like to know your answer to that, and how do we actually use words to break out of a physical fight?
I've never seen any kind of fight starting with elementary school fights that weren't preceded by words. Now, sometimes that happens, but there were some words exchanged. Black people are very familiar with that, even among each other. We get a whole lot of curse words in there before we start swinging and shooting, as a rule. I mean, we got to have that performance first. Hey, man, you cutting in line in front of me. Don't be getting in line in front of me. I've been standing here 2 hours. And you just come up and walk up and get in front of me? You disrespect me. Now, they're using words. They say, man, I ain't disrespecting you. I mean, you got a problem? I'm getting in line. I mean, I'm in a hurry. You in a hurry? You in a hurry? You in a hurry and you going to come up here and get in front of me? And then somebody else gets into it. I mean, who's kin to somebody else who's in line, who is involved in the discussion. And they say, wait a minute, you talking to my cousin? See, here we go. Now, everybody know what's going to happen, particularly if somebody's got a gun. All right? 5 minutes later, preceding, see what I mean? 5 minutes later, pop, 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 pop. All right? But preceding that was the warm-up. See, black people, we got to have that warm-up. We just don't start swinging. We have a little ritual we go through. Sometimes, it's body language. We start, we fall out of line. And start working those shoulders and whatnot, almost doing a little dance and whatnot. Bring it on, okay? See, body language is a language. It's a form of words. So I'm saying words usually precede the action. Wars break out. Adolf Hitler. He sent his emissaries. You look at the movie. Corleones. Go over and talk to Barzini. Or send Luca Brasi to talk to the Italians and see what's under their fingernails. All right? And Luca Brasi goes over. They offer him some wine, pre-war. And then somebody comes up behind him while he's sitting there at the bar and puts a wire around his neck, and his eyes bulge, and somebody puts a knife into his hand that's up on the bar, and he slowly sinks to the floor. But there were words before then. Luca says, what's in it for me? He said about $50,000 a year. He said, not bad. Not bad. That's pretty good money. $50,000 a year back in the 1940s, that's pretty good money. Okay. So we'll drink to that. See, they had a little talk. Mm-hmm. And they offered each other drinks before. And start shaking hands on it. See, that's a form of language. Language is, when you see somebody shaking hands, it means they're agreeing on something. So he extended his hand, and then his other hand is up there and whatnot, and there was suddenly a knife in it. And then somebody came up behind him and killed him. But there was language before. See, that usually works that way. Even between what we call nations. They send people back and forth, back and forth. Japanese envoys were talking back and forth. Back and forth. They were in Washington wearing top hats and whatnot during the time that planes were on their way to Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
Okay? But there was talk going on prior to that. And when it was all settled, there was talk, and they had a signing of a peace treaty, and a whole lot of those have been signed down through history. The Indians can tell you all about peace treaties, okay, somewhere along the line. So there's talk before and talk afterwards. And if you use Andy Dufresne as an example, see, talk can help you or hurt you. Andy Dufresne in the movie Shawshank Redemption said, the warden, I want you to help me to get out of here because I'm really innocent. And I got evidence now on account of somebody came in here and gave me some evidence, and I'm turning it over to you, and you can help me get out of here. And the warden said, you ain't going nowhere because I want you to stay here because I got work for you to do for me in my crooked operations. And so then Andy used words. He did some talking. He used the word obtuse and wound up in the hole because the warden said, I'll show you obtuse. Now, these were words prior to some action. So the call is correct about words precede action. But see, you can say certain words that will bring about the action that you want. The code says the seeds of the destruction of the system of white supremacy is built into the system itself. And what is the glue that holds the system of white supremacy together more than anything? It's words. That's the glue that holds it together. That's not the glue, and the call is correct. Muscle is what established it, but words preceded it, and words is what holds it together on a daily basis. Black people have been enchanted by words. I mean, we go out and buy things based on words. That's holding the system up. We hear something is new. That's a word, the word new. And so, hey, man, what is new? Barbershop, all right? Barbershop talk. Hey, man, what's new? What's happening? Those are words. Oh, man, you heard about this new pair of shoes that's been put out? by this basketball player, man, they off the hook. You need to see them shoes. You need to wear them. They're $800, man. They're the best thing out. See, these are words. And the person looks down at the shoes he's got on, and on account of the words, he decides, I mean, these shoes are real comfortable. Take him where he wants to go. He's very satisfied with them. Now, he's dissatisfied because the guy in the barbershop told him there's some new shoes out, $800, that are much better and the latest thing. See what I mean? Black people always want to be on what? These are words, the latest thing. Doesn't make any difference what it is. Is it the late thing? Putting your pants down. I mean, is that the latest thing? We want to be a part of the latest thing. I don't care what it is. Jumping off a cliff. I mean, the latest thing.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, so logic.
Yes, sir. Somebody's
but
got
I'm
a radio
talking about
on here.
words.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thanks for that answer to that question. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show, also known as the CRCS. You can get in contact with the show by calling this number, 516-453-9921. And please be sure when you do that to press the number 1 button and give the screener your first name so that I can properly identify you. If not, then I may have to do something else here. But there are people that are on the line. I can see that are listening, are just listening, and that's okay too because it's specified here that you are just listening. Now, at this particular time is a time for you, Mr. Fuller, to speak as briefly as you can about your book, and then we will go and answer some more questions. Go ahead, please, Mr. Fuller.
Yes. I hope that the book, I tried to write the book to clear up things that we've been talking about so far, because I think I even, in my explanation, just added to the confusion. So if people get the book, maybe they'll be able to see. Maybe not at first glance, because people tell me that's the way the book is. But if they go back, some people have said they have read the book, and it didn't mean anything to them. In fact, they didn't even know what I was talking about, because I guess I'm not the correct writer. So I never claimed to be that. But you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Now, some people have said they read the book, it means nothing to them, and they consistently say that, even today. And they went back and looked at it again. It still meant nothing to them. Then other people have said they read the book the first time or went through it somewhat here and there, and they wasn't getting much out of it. And then a few years later, after certain things happened and they evolved, they went back and took another look at the book, and things just jumped out at them, grabbed them. Because they say, yeah, this is, now I understand what he's saying. So I don't know how that works, but that's what people have told me. But you can get the textbook, workbook for victims of white supremacy by going to producejustice.com. And I hope that you will find something in there, clarify things for you as an individual that you can actually use, where you don't have to consult Neely Fuller. I'm not anybody's leader, anybody's guru, anybody's teacher. I just give out some opinions about what the problem is and how to solve it. Now, I haven't proven it because the problem is still here. But then nobody has proven what to do about racism. But I do think that a codified formula, because racism itself is a codified formula, so if you have a formula or trying to come up with one that's tailored to oppose racism and actually works, then a formula against a formula is what works. Like we have a virus going around. You want to have what? An antivirus or a virus fighter. So some elements of the virus that you're fighting will be in your antidote to the virus. That's why I've been told about inoculations. Actually, you're taking some of the poison that's in your body and putting it back into your body to build up a thing called immunity. So it's the same way with counteracting white supremacy. You take the words that the white supremacists use and you give them new definitions. And that deconfuses the confusion, which is what we have, because the white supremacists thrive off of confusion. So I hope the books do that. That's why I have a word guide, too, how to use words. And a practical example, just briefly here, go into producejustice.com to get the book. Like I mentioned the term American. What is the definition of an American? Just that alone. And even now, with all the demonstrations going on, people keep saying America mistreats black people. And that, like police brutality, that's impossible. Because you can't have something that doesn't exist mistreat anybody or treat anybody any kind of way. If it doesn't exist, America doesn't exist. So if America doesn't exist, and this is where the textbook for victims comes in, Fuller, if America ain't mistreating black people, who is? White supremacists. That's who is. Call it that. Call it that. Call it that. Call it that. Is that hard to do? Why do you keep saying America when you mean white supremacists? And if you don't believe it, I've run tests on it. Because I've asked people the same questions like I just asked. I said, you keep saying America mistreats black people. Yeah, America mistreats black people, always has. Been over 400 years of oppression, blah, 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 blah. I say, wait a minute, you're using a term, America, America, America. Who is America? Well, I'm talking about white folks. Well, wait a minute, slow down. Which white folks? The white people, the Ku Klux Klan, and people that go around mistreating black people. Oh, you know who they are. I mean, well, what do you call them? Well, you call them white folks. All white folks? No, I ain't talking about all white folks, man. I mean, I ain't talking about babies in the crib and all that. I know it ain't all white folks. Wait a minute, slow down. Because this is what I actually tell people. Slow down and think. Think about what you're saying. That's what the code is about, being precise. Black people are not known to be precise people. We just start talking and all over the place, rambling, foaming at the mouth. That's not precision work. That's not the way to get to the moon and back. You have to be precise. Everything has to be finely tuned, like a smooth-running engine. Not just something that rambles and makes a lot of noise. That's not power. Power is in something that runs smooth, like the sun. The sun is the most powerful thing in the universe when you talk about things, and it doesn't make a sound. But it moves the oceans, it moves everything. It moves people, it moves the water, it moves the sand. That's the sun, and it doesn't make a sound. Black people need a code that's precise, that's a smooth-running engine. A smooth-running engine does not rattle. It doesn't roar. Like they say, the Rolls-Royce engine. It whispers its presence, but it's one of the most powerful engines under the hood of a car. But you turn the ignition, like one advertisement says, and you hear nothing. You think that the engine is not on. But that engine is so powerful and so precise, and every part of it is so well put together, it doesn't make a sound. Black people don't understand that kind of power. We think that power is noise.
Okay, producejustice.com. Huh?
ProduceJustice.com.
All right, that's how
and
you
we
can
go,
get the book and
and
the
even in the book, what's the difference between music and noise? That's in there. There's a difference.
Okay. All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to Richard, and then hopefully we'll get into Chow. So let's do Richard here. Richard, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Yeah, my question for Mr. Fuller is, why are so many people now talk about racism all over the world now?
Could you repeat that? We really had a hard time hearing what you had to say. Could you repeat that, please?
Hello? Yes.
Yes,
my
could you
question
repeat
to
your
Mr. Fuller
question?
my question is, why I see too many white people talk about racism now all over the world. Why?
Mr. Fuller, did
What?
you understand him?
I did not understand the question.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we
What
can't
is
understand.
the question?
Yeah.
My question is, I see many white people all over the world. They're talking about racism more than before. So my question is, why do white people now talk about racism? Why supremacy?
Oh, why are white people talking about racism more than they have before?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Well, the code calls for me to say, in answer to that question, we have to ask the white people who are doing this. That's the procedure. That's the answer.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Richard. Okay, I think you got to ask them. Okay. All righty. Let's go to Chow. Let me see here if I can get this up here. Okay, Chow.
Yeah,
okay, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
All right. First of all, Mr. Fuller, Mr. West, the Produce Justice site is not loading. I tried to get on there to get the phone number and listen to the show, and for whatever reason, it's not loading. Everything else is low, my YouTube and all that other stuff. So, just be advised that there are some interferences going on for sure.
Okay.
ProduceJustice.com is not working.
It wasn't loading. It's not loading currently right now in front of the PC.
I'll check into that immediately as soon as I get off this program.
All right.
I'll look into that,
all right.
and then you can get back to that. Get back to this. That is the site. It's supposed to be working. It's supposed to be working. It is supposed to be working. If it's not working for any reason, it's supposed to be working. It's not supposed to be a reason for it not working. ProduceJustice.com. Keep at it. And as soon as I can get off of the air here, I'm going to immediately check into why it is not working, because it's supposed to be working.
Yes. All right. So my question, Mr. Fuller, is, for years we had the gentleman, the extermination man, come on and he say, oh, they're trying to exterminate us and they doing this and they doing that. And when I'm seeing on all of these feeds, all of these police brutalities, these racist suspect brutalities, all of these killings, excessive force, this, that, and the third. It's weird because if anybody knows anybody from the streets or anything like that, and they were killers, and they would do things, criminal activity or whatever, they wouldn't allow anybody to record them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know anybody that goes to commits a murder, sees a camera in their face and say, hey, I'm going to let this person film me and get away with it and upload it to the internet or whatever the case may be. But we do need a code. We don't. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to get at me for this, but we don't need to be out there in these protests at this point, simply because if you think about it, we're at a position of, all being together a target. I guess my question to you, Mr. Fuller, is, do you think that if the majority of law enforcement was black, the majority of judges, military was black. Do you think that the white supremacists or the racist suspects or even white people, do you think that they would feel protected?
Do I think that who would be protected?
I didn't say be protected. Do you think that they would feel protected? I mean, I understand you say, oh, you got to ask them, but just asking you, if the majority of the police officers were white, were black, the majority of judges were black, majority of military were black, do you think that the white people would be carrying on like they're carrying on when it comes to dealing with black people?
Under the system of white supremacy, black judges do what the white supremacists want done. Black law enforcement officers do what the white supremacists want done. Black people do what the white supremacists want done. That's the power of being a white supremacist. The white supremacists are the most powerful people that the planet has ever seen. I put this in the textbook. It's either true or false. There have been no people on this planet who are smarter and more powerful than a white man and a white woman who believe in white supremacy, and they have proven it. They are not in the process of proving their power, and they are not in the process of proving how smart they are. They have proven, past tense, to be the smartest and most powerful people that the world has ever seen. And they have set up an evil system all over the world. The only government that really counts all over the world, called in capital letters the system of white supremacy, that dominates and mistreats non-white people 24/7 in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. No people who have color in their skin are smarter collectively and more powerful collectively than those white people who have chosen to be white supremacists. Now, those statements that I just made are either true or false.
Okay, listen, I'm going to have to cut this off because we're getting ready to go to the next hour. So thank you for your call, Chow, and do not be a stranger. Thank you so much. Okay, got to make this announcement. My people who helped produce this show have sent a message that one of the technicians, Robert, is working on that problem, Mr. Fuller, about when the caller mentioned that you couldn't get on at Produce Justice. He is now working on that to get it rectified, and when it is, they will also contact me so that I can make that announcement all over so everybody can hear that. So Robert is working on that site at producejustice.com. Okay, that is the conclusion of the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I'm your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Thanks for your calls. Thanks for listening. Those may have to go, but we do have another hour to go on the Counter Racist Code Show. So again, thanks for listening. Okay, you are back for the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, call this number, 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that again, 516-453-9921. And when you call that number, be sure to press the number 1 button You will go to the head of the line, so to speak. Make sure that you give the screen caller your name so that I can properly introduce you. Now, you can also contact me by Gmail, the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. I can't promise you that I will read that Gmail on today's show, but we do have some time allotted for some Gmails to be read. So those are the two that you can read by listening to what I had just mentioned. Thank you for Brother Moonpie. He's also working on the situation. I have a call that pressed the button, but you didn't give a name, so I don't know who you are. Please, ma'am, please, sir, give your name so I can identify you, or else I cannot identify you, and that's not going to be good. I'm going to take a chance this time, and I'm going to ask you, whoever you are, and that's no disrespect, to give your first name anyway. Okay, let me see here if I can do this. Okay, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your first name, and what is your question? Okay, going once. What is your first name, and what is your question?
Am I on the phone? Hello?
Yes. Yeah, give your name and your first name anyway, and then your question, please.
My name is Laverne. I'm calling from Tennessee.
Okay.
One of the callers had an issue with logging into producejustice.com.
Yes.
If you go to blogtalkradio.com/producejustice, you should be able to log on.
Okay, repeat that again for somebody that didn't hear you. Go ahead.
It's blogtalkradio.com/producejustice.com. You should be able to listen into the show.
Okay. Now, did you have a question for Mr. Fuller?
No, I was listening, and I know some of the callers were having issues with being able to hear the show.
Okay. All righty.
I'm still learning.
That. No, he's still learning. Okay. Appreciate that. All right.
Thank
Very
you.
much so. Uh-huh. You are welcome. Okay. Moonpie and them are really efforting to get this baby where it's supposed to be at. Let me see here. Okay. While we're waiting on another call, because there are several people who are just listening, which is good. See, American Indian Truth, I guess, has just joined the conversation, so that's good. Vorp is on, and there are a few others here that are on, so we appreciate that very much. Pata is on. Okay. All right, let's do this. Let's see, Black_Justice_Reigns has a question here. Mr. Fuller says, if you could ask Mr. Fuller another question for me in addition to the last one I sent in, you may ask this on a different podcast from the previous ones. How Mr. Fuller defines equality and balance. Are they in the word guide, and do they mean the same thing? Mr. Fuller, I know the answer to that, but I'm going to ask you, since this person asked this, could you ask Mr. Fuller defines equality and balance, and are they in the word guide, and do they mean the same thing? Mr. Fuller?
What it means, I don't use, I kind of steer away from the word equality, because that's too, you might say, contextual. And so that's another word. What do you mean by contextual? It means it's not very explanatory, in my opinion, that word equality. I kind of steer away from that, except to add words to it, like equal protection of the laws and whatnot. That's clearer when you add other words to it. But just saying equality is something like the word liberty. Liberty to do what? Liberty to punch somebody in the nose? That's liberty. I mean, you have to say what the context is. So what I did, when I first came up with the definition for justice, I called justice balance between people. And that's in the first edition, the 1984 edition of the Code. I didn't go any further than that. But in the revised expanded edition, I said balance between people that's not explicit enough. So then I came up with a more explicit, detailed definition, because this is everything we're doing with words is evolutionary, you might say. We're evolving. So I'm trying to evolve. So I said, Fuller, that's inadequate, balance between people. I mean, it's a definition, but balance between people, well, but then I kind of modified it in my own mind and said correct balance. But then that didn't go far enough. So then I just came up with a definition in about 1994 of what I think is the best definition ever, until someone comes along with one better, for the word justice. Because I found that nobody had a definition for justice that was acceptable to me in a way that I could understand it. So here it is. And it's in the textbook, the Revised Expanded Edition, 2016 edition. And in the Word Guide, justice is in two parts. Guaranteeing, that's part one, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's part one. Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. Part two. Guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Underline constructive. And that's it. You got to have, in other words, in order to have justice, you got to guarantee that no person is mistreated. And number two, you have to guarantee, underline, guarantee that no person, or that every person rather, gets the most constructive help based on what that person needs that's constructive. But you got to underline constructive, because a person might, standing in front of the liquor store and say, hey, man, give me some money because I want to buy some more liquor. He's already staggering drunk. Now, you can help that person, but not by giving that person more money to put that person in a worse condition than they already are. Now, the person who is asking for the money, they look at it like you would be helping them if you gave them the money. Probably curse you out because you didn't give it to them. But you're not helping the person to go back into the liquor store. The person is already drunk. Now they're going to get drunker, and they're going to harm themselves or somebody else or both. Because that's what the liquor does. That's what whiskey does. There's plenty of evidence that shows that's what happens, particularly when somebody gets under the steering wheel of a car. The record shows that a lot of people may get hurt in many, many instances. So that's not constructive help. Constructive help means that you actually improve the person. That's what justice is. You improve everything. You make it better than it was before. That's the result of justice. But you got to guarantee that no person is mistreated in that process. And you got to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. I don't think that anybody would ever come up with a definition better than that one. It's in the textbook. It's in the word guide of the textbook. And if anybody does, under compensatory logic, I want to know about it, and I want to accept that definition, any definition that beats that one, guaranteeing that nobody, white, non-white, male, female, old, young, whatever, nobody is mistreated. You got to do that. And the second part, you got to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help in any situation, on the job or anywhere else. And the example of that, you can hold up your hand if you're having a meeting on the job. And you say, well, wait a minute, sir, Mr. Graham, or Miss Smithers, or whatever the name is, of the person you're addressing. Is anybody in this proposal that you're making, is anybody going to be mistreated? In this thing that we're talking about doing, this new program that we're going to have, and is the person that needs help the most, person here in this facility, going to get the most constructive help? These are questions, just two. You're not being disrupted or anything like that. But if you're asked, well, why are you asking this question? You say, in order to see to it that justice is guaranteed here on this job. This proposal that is being made, has it been examined in detail to guarantee that no person will be mistreated, and to guarantee that the person that needs help the most will get that help on this job? Yes or no, sir? And once you ask a question according to compensatory logic, always put the question mark behind it, and don't help with the answer.
Okay,
that's
we'll
another
do that.
part of the code.
All righty, let's go to the phone lines. Let's see. Donnie, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hi. First of all, I want to say thank you to you guys to Mr. Neely Fuller for allowing me to even, get on the show and ask the question. This is truly an honor, I listen to him on YouTube. I listen to you on YouTube, sir, a lot, and I really dig a lot of what you say, But my question is, in this year 2020, in this new decade, with information, at our fingertips, with the world literally at our fingertips, with all, we're living in the age of information, basically. Why is it that we still choose to call ourselves the adjective black when we're clearly not black people? Our skin color is not black. There are no laws written to protect anyone black. There are absolutely no laws on the book written to protect anyone black, because black people don't exist. Like I say, black is an adjective. It's a descriptive word. It's not a noun. Instead of calling ourselves who we truly are, we so-called black Americans are the original Americans of this land. We are the aboriginals, or the true American Indians of this land. So why is it that we in this age, in this day and time, still choose to consider ourselves black when we know that there's absolutely no protection under that status?
Why do we still use the term black?
Yes, when there's absolutely no protection.
Each person, just like you're saying, the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept says you can call yourself anything you want to. And you should. If you choose not to do that, do it. And if you want other people to stop using the term black, you tell them, just like you're doing now. Or raise the question, why do we consistently use that term? I use the term to describe myself because the white supremacist says that's what I am. And I want them to stand by their work, because that's a part of the code too. Everybody stands by their work. I go under the name of Neely Fuller Jr. And there are some people who say that's a slave name. That's a slave master's name. And why do I keep using this name? I use the name because it's evidence. That's the reason. It's evidence that I am under their thumb. I want, that's a slave master's name. That's exactly, and I am subject to slave masters here in 2020. They're called white supremacists. Slavery did not end because white supremacy didn't end. So as long as there's been white supremacists, the white supremacists put a name on me, which is like having a prison number, and they name me after themselves, saying that's my Negro. That's my slave. And I'm going to name my slave, my dog. I mean, you have dogs named Rex. You got dogs named Tracy. You got dogs named whatever. All right? Susan. They name their dogs. And they put their dogs on a leash. I'm on a leash. Okay? But this is evidence. I don't want to erase that evidence. No, I keep that. I keep the name that you put on me. That's a brand. I want to be able to show my brand. Like people roll up their sleeves and show their number that they had in a death camp. So I don't want that erased. I want to be able to show all down through history. This is what you did. I didn't do this. I was branded like a cow. So this is your brand. I don't have a brand of my own.
Okay, we're pressed up for time, so I'm going to have to cut that, Donnie, but I do appreciate, and we do appreciate you calling. Thanks for calling.
Just one more question. It doesn't have to be answered, but why not encourage the youth to embrace their indigenousness and get rid of that old slave code of black? That's my only question. But
all right,
I know we're pressed for time, so thank you.
All right, thanks for calling. Don't be a stranger.
That comes under VGQ.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, we got to keep
People can think about it and do it if they see fit.
Okay. We got to keep it moving. It's 10:16. So let's see. We got to get the Gmail in here. Now, this is from a brother over in England, Mr. Fuller, Anthony Mackin. Says, Mr. Fuller, my question for you today is that in the past you've said that white supremacists have a history of using non-white people to fight their internal battles within the white family on their behalf. Once the battles are over, it's back to business as usual, and white supremacy is still running the yard. In light of the recent protests, riots, and general unrest, particularly in such as America, the UK, and Australia, Mr. Fuller, could you please talk about the counter-racist concept of, quote, racial shadow boxing, end of quote, and how it may be in effect in these current protests and riots? Regards, Anthony McKinn of England.
Well, racial shadow boxing is described in the code as a black person boxing the shadow of the races, meaning another black person. See, black people, a lot of black people say, well, really our problem is, these black leaders, because they're a bunch of sellouts, they're a bunch of Uncle Toms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the way that's described in the textbook, that's racial shadow boxing. You're boxing the shadow that the white supremacists have made. But you're not boxing the white supremacists. You're not affecting the white supremacists at all. So when black people even argue with each other, these barbershop arguments, these handkerchief-head Negroes got to go. I mean, they're a bunch of sellouts. We got to get rid of that mayor we got. And, we get rid of that mayor, everything going to be all right because he's an Uncle Tom. And then we just keep doing that, generation after generation. We should stop doing it according to the code. Why? It doesn't work. That's why.
Okay.
I'm punching out my cellmate in the prison. That's what that is. Because I disagree with what he's saying about our condition. Say, man, the warden come down here and you do all that push shoveling, you do all that head scratching. You ain't nothing but a stone Tom, man. You're embarrassing me. It's embarrassing to me to be in the same cell with you. The way you act when the warden come through making his inspection. I mean, you talking all that stuff and whatnot. I let the warden know. I don't like this situation. I don't like him or nothing about this place. But you over there doing that, Tom, and talking about you appreciate the mattress that we got and the new paint job we got in our cell. You ain't nothing but a handkerchief head, Uncle Tom, N-word. And I don't want to be in cell with you. No more. You got that? I need to go upside your head right now, talking that stuff. They just left here. I ought to do a job on you. Now, that's what you call racial shadowboxing. Because all it is two black people in the same cell going at each other, which we do very well all over the world. That doesn't change anything.
Mm-hmm.
The code says stop doing it, and you stop doing it for one primary reason. It's not logical, and it doesn't work.
Okay.
Codification is about doing everything that works.
Alrighty.
And not ever doing anything or saying anything that doesn't work.
All right. Amun, I'm going to get to you after we finish this particular section. Announcement here from my producers. Somebody called in about the Blog Talk Radio. Well, my producers have sent me this. It says you can access the show by going to, listen very carefully, by going to blogtalkradio.com/produce justice. Let me say that again. blogtalkradio.com/produce justice, and you can access the program. They're still working on the program for, I believe it's at producejustice.com, which Mr. Fuller will talk about in a few moments concerning his book. So again, blogtalkradio.com/produce justice. You can get the whole show. This here, American Indian Truth says this concerning the one caller, black is not a people. It's a status. This is the problem here. We have elders who are gatekeepers, stuck in the old way, teach the truth. We are not black. We are the original people of this land. Native American, American NA, Native American originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races. That's RACES. Found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of European born in a dictionary. The reference for that is from 1828 Webster's Dictionary. Then they want to know this, Mr. Fuller, and I don't know the answer to this, but they want to know how I would love to interview Mr. Fuller, and how can we make that happen? You care to respond to that, Mr. Fuller? I don't know.
How can we make what happen?
Interview. So I would love to interview Mr. Fuller. How can we make that happen?
Well, I used to do interviews on one-on-one, but now I just go to producejustice.com and do what I'm doing now.
Okay.
And people just ask me questions because that's all an interview is. Just questions and answers. And I try to do it in the textbook.
Okay.
See what I mean? And here's another thing I want people to understand about the code. The code is just something that you read, and you accept whatever works for you and reject what doesn't. That's all what any code is. It depends on what you're trying to do. See, because the code is something new, really, when it comes to black people, because of the things that are in it. Like, for instance, the code is about ending arguments between black people, along with that shadowboxing thing, which is a form of it. It absolutely prohibits any argument between one black person and another. We've never had anything like that. In other words, black people, according to the code, are not supposed to ever have an argument. We have conversations. Now, what's the difference between a conversation and an argument? An argument is designed to win arguments. Something like a sport. I mean, like playing checkers or whatnot. I mean, you just win a game of checkers or a game of cards. I mean, and you say, I won. a conversation for black people, compensatory counter-racist conversation, is supposed to be about problem solving, not trying to win an argument. Okay. And so an interview or any kind of talk between black people is supposed to what? When that talk is ended, any kind of talk going on between any two black people or any two non-white people or any two victims of white supremacy, if you want to put it in that context, to keep from using the word black and whatnot, to say victims of white supremacy, because that's what we're talking about, racism. Okay?
We're talking
so you can say you're a victim. Yes, but we're never supposed to have arguments. We have conversations.
Okay.
And conversations are about questions and answers.
Okay. Now, let me finish this segment here. It says this, okay, Ahmoud and then Leno from Africa, I will get to you, but here is what we have to do here. Mr. Fuller, to finish up this particular segment, and we have about 3 minutes. It says, this comes from Mr. Black. He says this, Mr. Fuller, what type of work did you perform in the time you separated from the military until now, and what has happened, what has been the most personally rewarding thing for you writing your book? Thank you, Nathan.
The most rewarding thing for me writing my book is something that happened in 1956 in Japan, when I first started writing the first parts of the code. And that is talking to a black sergeant one day. He impressed on me and kind of made me angry when he did it. He said he didn't want to hear anything from me about putting forth an effort. He said, Fuller, you're talking about hard work. He said, hard work. So you go out there and look at those Japanese farmers with those wooden plows because they don't have anything else. And they're out there up to their waist every day in those rice paddies, working. Say, watch them. They're small in stature, many of them, but they're working with what they have as best they can in those rice paddies. He said, you see them. You're looking at them. So you're not doing very much. So you're in this supply shed working behind a desk. He said, they are out there in those rice paddies, up to their waist in mud and feces. And he says they are working hard, stoically, going about their work. He said that's hard work that they're doing. He said sometimes they have an animal trying to help them, and the animal, you can see the bones, you can see the ribs in the animal, because the animal is not being adequately fed. But they're doing the best they can. And he said, the point that I'm making, Fuller, I don't want to hear anything from you about hard work and how hard you've been working, or from anybody else. He said, there's nothing unique about hard work. He said, what's unique is results. And that's what I want to hear. Now, that made me angry. But in the years since then, I thought about that. And when it comes to negotiating time with white people, we don't want to hear about any drama or how anybody feels about anything. We just want the results. And the result has got to be replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And everything else is just a lot of noise.
Okay, got to leave it there for this commercial here. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, call 453-9921. Be sure to press the number 1 button, and you will go to the top of the line, just as Amon did, which I'm going to get to after this. You can also try to reach me at the Gmail, the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. Chances are it will not get read today, but at some point in time it will get read get read at some point. Again, for those who are having problems going to producejustice.com, I'm told that by my producer you can go to blogtalkradio.com/producejustice, and you are all in. The technicians are still working on the problems at Produce Justice. That's the latest information that we have on that. Okay, let me go to Amon. Thank you for waiting. You are on with Mr. Fuller. If I can, there you go. You're on. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I'd like to start out with a comment, and that is thank you for being resilient and having the program to continue, even though I've been attempting to get online at producersjustice.com and couldn't get on, and I'm glad that you and your staff were able to get it back up on Blog Talk Radio. So I've been listening on the phone luckily I was able to recall the number. And I want to use this opportunity to thank Mr. Fuller because in the light of this uprising/rebellion, I haven't heard white people and non-white people use the term white supremacy to imply this as the problem for this uprising. I haven't seen it in media like on TV or online in a consistent manner my whole life. And so I remember reading in the book that you really can't solve a problem unless you use the correct words to describe the problem. And it's taken a long time to get to this point, so I imagine that it's going to take a very long time to get to the next step. But Mr. Fuller's work seems to be coming to fruition in getting people, certain people, maybe even a critical mass on code to use the term white supremacy to describe the problem. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. With this uprising and rebellion, as people dialogue and fight amongst one another, what is the next constructive step for people to do besides using the constructive laws of interaction and seek to contact only another person only when necessary to do so in order to say or do something of needed constructive value? At all other times, seek to be alone, study alone, and work alone, and communicate with what is the origin of all things, like God or the all-power or the Creator. As people struggle to do that during this chaotic time, what is the next constructive step to continue to solve this problem?
The constructive steps is anything that's constructive. That's all it really is. Every move that people make is going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. Doesn't make any difference who the person is. Everything that you do every day, all you have to do is just ask this question, because every problem that's ever been solved started with a question. And every question has an answer. So you just simply say, this thing that we're fixing to do today, is it constructive or non-constructive? And if it is constructive, how is it constructive? See, so you just codify everything that you do so that you get a constructive result. Like the sergeant was telling me, the black sergeant, a master sergeant. But he was giving me, really, the basis for everything that I've ever written in codification. Get the results. What is going to be the result? The drama is all drama. All kinds of drama is going on all the time. You see drama every day. Everybody's saying this and everybody's saying that, and you got this opinion on this, and this truckloads and shiploads of opinions and viewpoints, all back and forth. People moving about, doing this. But divide everything into just those two narrow categories that are really very expansive. They call them narrow, but they are very expansive. Constructive, non-constructive. And so you just ask that question on jobs and everything else in all 9 areas of activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. I mean, in religion, you ask the pastor, reverend, or pastor, or whomever, whatever title he's got. This thing that you're talking about, is it constructive or non-constructive? And if it is constructive, how? See, when you ask one question, you might have about 2,000 questions behind that one question that you first asked. Until what? Until all questions are answered. Because every question has an answer. There's no such thing as a question without an answer. So you want the answer to lead to constructive action rather than non-constructive action. That's all it is. That's the essence of what I call codification.
All right.
Having a code.
All righty. All right, thank you, Brother
What works
Moon.
And what doesn't. Constructive,
and,
non-constructive.
And don't be a stranger calling again. Thank you so much. Okay, we got to get this in. Let's see. Brother Leno, let me see here, from Africa, I believe it is. Go ahead. You're on. Turn down your radio so I can talk. So we can talk. Yeah. Got your radio down. Okay. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Go to university 2 years. So,
what are you going to take?
I'm going to take engineering, petroleum preferably. But the thing is, when you, it's a long story. Okay. It's a messy. Yeah.
Okay.
So
hello. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
But the thing is, it's so specific, right?
Yep.
So I was going to go to electric engineering.
Yep.
And my uncle out in Africa, he's looking for young guys like myself. And
hey,
I got to start thinking out of the box.
You engineers are the brilliant ones in the world. Without
hello. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
You wouldn't have the robotics. You wouldn't have all of that.
Hello.
But it came to the point is like, I was using things. I'm like, how is it made? What's the point of using things I don't even know that
okay, Leno, what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
I chose a path that was different than that, but I don't know if.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. He sounded like he was
I think the person may be distracted. Maybe the person is talking to someone else.
It didn't seem like
they
that,
are not realizing they're still on the air.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what it
let me do
sounded
this.
like.
Okay, Sylvia, thanks for listening. You didn't give your last name, but we appreciate the fact that you're listening. As a matter of fact, all of the callers that are on the line, on this line listening, we thank you for that. American Indian Truth has this, Mr. Fuller. Says, Mr. Fuller, do you subscribe to the belief in the transatlantic slave narrative? Please elaborate on your answer either way, and thank you.
Do I subscribe to the transatlantic
belief in the transatlantic slave trade narrative?
Oh, it could have happened. I don't know. I wasn't here. But I always say if we're talking about history, I don't think any history is accurate. Just bits and pieces. That's all I think that history is. When anybody writes it, the most comprehensive of all histories do not tell the truth. That's what I believe. Based on what? Based on logic. Because there's no way to know. There's no way to know the truth about every individual, what that individual did on any particular day 2,000 years ago. Every move that individual made. Everything that individual said to someone. I don't think, and I could be inaccurate about it, but I don't think so. When a person says, I know all of history. I know history. I got my history down pat. I know the history of black people. You know the history. See, go to the question lane. Do you know the history of every black person that ever existed on this planet and what that black person had for breakfast on any given Thursday and what that black person did at a particular time, 5 o'clock in the evening on a particular day 2,000 years ago? Do you know that individual black person's history? Yes or no? And I think if a person tells the truth, they will say no. See, so all of history is distorted in answer to the question about the transatlantic slave trade. I don't think that history will ever be told by anybody, or can be, just like any history will never be told exactly the way that it actually happened by anybody. Everything is just sort of like a kind of a shoddy frame of reference at very best when you start talking about what happened yesterday anywhere or 15 minutes ago. That's history. Sometimes people are looking at something and don't even get it straight. Now, I've seen that happen. They teach that in what you call law enforcement school. Sometimes they will say, well, the person that did the crime, did they have on a blue shirt or a red shirt at the time that the crime was? And so everybody starts arguing back and forth about whether the shirt of the person that committed the crime was blue or red. Of the person, the shirt of the person that committed the crime. When they finally track it down, maybe 8 years later, person didn't have on a shirt at all. But that's the way a lot of people remembered it who were called, quote, unquote, eyewitnesses.
Mm-hmm.
It was the person that was standing next to the person that had on the red shirt or the blue shirt. They got it mixed up.
Got it mixed
up. In the excitement.
All righty. Let's do this. This is we got a lot of international people listening today. This is Aaron from Spain saying this, Mr. Fuller. Three questions. I'm going to try to morph them into one. He says this, Mr. Fuller, why black people looting and protesting and destroying historical statues does that follow the compensatory law? Why using slogans like Black Lives Matters are not logical? And 3, if Black Lives Matters, why do black people harm and sometimes kill each other?
Well, in answer to the first question about the statues, the people who put up the statues are the people who should take them down. I wouldn't go out there and pull one down if they say that's against the law. Why? I'm a prisoner of war, so I'm not going to do that. And if the statue stays there forever, my problem is not with that statue. My problem is with a person who is breathing. I don't have any problem with dead people. I don't care what they did when they were moving around. But once they're dead, I have no problem with it, and I have no problem with anybody commemorating them for what they did. The code says I'll walk past there and say, well, Robert E. Lee, you made a statue of him. Okay, just say he did what he did. Just say what he did and why he did it. Did he own slaves? If he owned slaves, let it stay there. Yeah, he owned slaves. Who was that slave? Well, the people that came before me, who made me a slave. Let it stand there, stand on there. What is this? What is this statue taking up all this space for? What is the message? I want to know what this person's reputation is. Why you made a statue of this person, but tell it all. Don't tell part of it. Tell it all. How many battles they fought and all like that, and what they fought it for, states' rights or whatever. But put down everything, not some things, not pick out things. All of the major things that the person did. And the main one is, did this person own slaves? And if the answer is yes, put that down there in the biggest letters. Slavery is important. Who were the slaves? How did you treat the slaves? Being slaves, because being slaves means you automatically were mistreated. This person was a mistreater? Oh, yeah, I want to remember him. No. Don't tell me that Adolf Hitler didn't exist. No. Yeah, tell everything about him. Everything. Don't leave out nothing. So we'll know who he was.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point of having history. Okay, now what was that other question?
The second question, he had two more. Why using slogans like Black Lives Matters are not logical?
Anybody can use any slogan they want to. See, the code says people can say what's on their minds, and particularly black people who have not been allowed to speak and really say what they think. Mm-hmm. And I understand the slogan Black Lives Matter came from two black females. And under VGQ, I won't touch that. That is absolutely prohibited. Victims guaranteed qualification. Every black person has the guaranteed qualification based on logic and based on justice to say about his or her condition whatever he or she chooses to say, whether Neely Fuller or anybody else agrees with it or not. That is supposed to be a guarantee. If you can't talk about what you want to say about your being a prisoner of war, as a prisoner of war, what can you do? You should be able to say anything about your condition with no one trying to overrule it or even desiring to.
Okay. And the third question is, if Black Lives Matter, why do black people harm and sometimes kill each other?
Black people harm and kill each other because that's what we have been trained to do by the white supremacists. And I understand in history, all the historians I ever talked to said black people were harming and killing each other before white supremacy, called tribalism, which they do to this very day in huge numbers with the white supremacists' permission and help. And I understand that whole thing that happened in 1994, I think it was 1994, in Rwanda, 800,000 people in just a couple of weeks hacked each other to death in a place called Rwanda, in what black people call the mother continent. 800,000 black people killed each other in a matter of a few weeks. 800,000, using mostly machetes, which is all the tools that they had to do it. And just think about someone coming in with a machete and chopping up everybody in your family. Black people doing that to black people. But in the system of white supremacy, according to the code, the white supremacists are to blame for that. Why? Because it happened on their watch. That's why. Mm-hmm. Those people in Rwanda come under the system of white supremacy. So you always blame the person with the most power.
Okay.
And the white supremacists have the most power over every non-white person on this planet here in 2020. And that statement that I just made is either true or false.
All righty. Gigi says this, Mr. Fuller. Please ask Mr. Fuller whether he would agree that calling them white dominators racist instead of supremacist racist is appropriate.
Here again, victims guaranteed qualification, a term that I made up and put into the book. If this person talking considers himself a victim of white supremacy. In other words, he's subject to the white supremacists, which is what the book is written for. If he wants to do that, if he wants to say that, then just start saying it. You can say anything you want to about race, racism, or counter-racism. That's a qualification. You're qualified to do that. Victims guaranteed qualification. You can say anything about racism or counter-racism that you wish to say. And that's a duty. Anything you want to say and anything you want to influence other people to say. That's what I'm doing with my books. I choose to use the term white supremacy because I say that's exactly what it is if I'm going to tell the truth. If I'm going to tell the truth, it is the white people who believe in dominating and mistreating black people, which is what white supremacy is, are the most powerful and the smartest people that history has recorded that ever existed on planet Earth. I don't know about other planets, but the evidence shows that this is true here in 2020, not in some ancient time and what like that. Here in 2020, that statement is either true or false, and I'm saying the evidence shows that it's true.
All right, let's do this. Let's go to this. Leno, what is your question? All right, this is the second time. Leno, what is your question?
Hey, Neely.
Yes,
Fuller,
what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
How do I get an autographed book from him? Because I ordered one from Amazon, but I don't see it being an autograph. How do I get one autographed from him?
Mr. Fuller?
Oh, how does he get an autographed copy of the book?
Yeah.
Is that his question?
Yes.
That's my question, Neely.
I've sometimes given out autographs, but I am reluctant to do so because of the codification. In other words, I'm trying to de-emphasize. I'm trying to de-emphasize Neely Fuller as being the focus of Neely Fuller's work.
Excuse me, Mr. Fuller. Excuse me, Mr. Fuller. Leno, Mr. Fuller is trying to give you information, but you have so much background noise that he can't get through. Now, you're going to have to move out of a room so Mr. Fuller can answer your question, or we have to terminate the telephone call. You have to make the decision on that, sir.
I'm just going to be 2 seconds. This is very important. Yeah. I'm here. I'm listening now. Excuse me. Can I use it for a second?
Okay.
This is very
now,
important.
I hear a lot of distortion.
Yeah, there's a lot of distortion there. Leno, we're trying to help you. Please, sir. All right, you got him out of the room now? You have him out of the room now?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
And the question was what?
How did he get an autograph, and you were addressing it?
Oh, yeah, the autograph. I'm reluctant to give out autographs anymore, autograph copies of the book, because I'm trying to keep away from Neely Fuller being the center of even what Neely Fuller is trying to write, the message. Part of the code is don't upstage your message. Your message is supposed to be more known than who you are. Why? Because Neely Fuller is just a signpost pointing in the direction of solving a problem. So the emphasis should be not on, and a lot of people praise Neely Fuller and all like that. And I keep saying, we got to get out of that. We got to get out of that whole thing about a personality. Reason being, I've seen it happen to too many other people. People go to a museum, and you see a picture on a wall, and you say, that's Frederick Douglass. He was a great man. He did a lot for black people. He was an ex-slave. And then you move on to the next picture. This is Martin Luther King. This is Rosa Parks. And you come out of a museum not knowing anything about what the person did.
Wow.
And worse still, not having any idea of what to do on that day when you walk out of that museum to solve the problem of replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Why? We're too busy making pictures of Nelson Mandela rather than saying, what did Nelson Mandela say do? What black people have to do. D-O. That's the only thing that counts. That's what codification is all about.
All right. So no autograph copies. Okay, Mr. Fuller, we have about two or 3 minutes, and I purposely did this so that you can have time to talk about the book. Now, you can't go right now to producejustice.com. They're working on that. You have to go to blogtalkradio.com//producejustice, and you can hear the program. But talk about your book for the remaining minute and a half, please.
Yes. The book is designed to help the individual person who perceives him or herself to be victimized in economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, or war by the white supremacists, a person of color, anywhere on the planet. So it's just a bunch of explanations about what's going on and why, and what to do about it as an individual person. That's how the book is written. Everything is directed to the individual. You don't have to look over and see what somebody else is doing or saying and whatnot. It's just to help you as an individual, page by page, solve whatever your problem is as it is connected with the system of white supremacy, if you believe there's any such thing as white supremacy, and you are a victim of it. If you don't perceive yourself as being a victim of racism, that racism doesn't affect you, then the book is not for you. And it's just a book of suggestions that is designed to work for you, not against you, if you use these suggestions. That's what it is, page after page. A book of explanations of why you're doing whatever you're doing, if you're going to do it. If you choose to do it, if you don't choose to do it, just turn to the next page and find something that you might choose to do. To do what? In order to solve a problem. It's all about solving problems. Just like an auto mechanics book, designed to solve a problem that you might have with your car. So the textbook for victims of white supremacy is supposed to be a problem-solving manual. That's all. If you have a problem with racism, it has suggestions about how to go about speaking and acting in order to solve the individual problem that you have. Because the theory is this, the concept is this. Because the last word in the main title of the book is concept. The concept is this. If you solve the problem of each individual black person on the planet, you automatically are solving the problem of all the black people on the planet.
Okay.
If each individual is following the code.
Okay. Got to leave it there because the show has come to an end. Thank you so much, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Thank you, Gmailers. Thank you for everyone for listening. We will try to do better next week. Until then, God bless. Thank you again for listening.
ProduceJustice.com.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. All right. Have a good day, everybody.